My name is Janet, and I'm 61 years old. I've been living alone for the last 8 years, ever since my husband, Ben, passed away unexpectedly at 53. He was my high school sweetheart, my first and only love. We had a good marriage, or at least that's how I remember it. It wasn't perfect, but it was enough. Ben worked in insurance. I worked as a secretary for a small law firm, and we spent our evenings talking about our day over dinner. Our house was never extravagant, but it was ours. It was comfortable, with plenty of space for us to grow old together. Or at least that's what I thought. But life had other plans. Ben was gone too soon, and I was left with memories of a life I never got to finish living. And then there was Julia, our daughter, the one piece of him I still had. I never remarried. I didn't see the point. I didn't need anyone else. I had Julia. From the moment she was born, I knew she would be different. She had an independent streak that could cut through steel. When she was 5, she insisted on tying her own shoes, and when she was 10, she gave up on dolls, preferring books instead. I remember being proud of that. As a single mother, I'd poured all my love into her. She became my world. I made sure she knew she could rely on me for anything: school projects, advice, comfort when things weren't going right. I was her safe place, the one person who always had her back. I wasn't the perfect mother, but I was present. I tried to be everything for her. By the time she was in high school, I could see that she was more than just independent. She was fiercely driven. She never let anything stop her. Even when she got a part-time job at the library, she still managed to keep up with her studies and her social life. I was proud of the young woman she was becoming, even if it meant that we spent less and less time together. She was busy, and I didn't want to hold her back. I wanted her to have the world at her feet. But as the years passed, things began to change between us. It was subtle at first: a few less phone calls, a few more curt responses to my texts. At first, I brushed it off. She was growing up, finding her own way. I'd always known this day would come, but I wasn't ready for it. Then, one evening, when she was 27 and still living in the city, I invited her to dinner. I made her favorite: lasagna, garlic bread, a green salad. I poured the wine and we started talking like we always had. But something was off. She wasn't looking at me the way she used to. Her eyes were distant, like she was somewhere else. And then, out of nowhere, she said it. "You're toxic, Mom," she said, her voice sharp. I froze. I thought I misheard her. "What did you say?" "You heard me," she repeated, crossing her arms. "You've always been like this, always hovering, always controlling. I can't breathe when I'm around you." I didn't know how to respond. Toxic? Me? I had always tried to do the best I could. I had been there for her, always. And now she was telling me that I was the problem? "I'm sorry you feel that way," I said, my voice trembling, but I tried to hold it together. "I've always wanted what's best for you, Julia. Always." Her eyes narrowed. "I don't need you to fix things anymore, Mom. I'm an adult. I can take care of myself. But you always make everything about you." I felt the sting of her words, but I didn't say anything more. I wasn't sure what to say. Part of me wanted to argue, to remind her of everything I had done for her. But a bigger part of me was hurt. I hadn't seen this coming. For years, I had poured my love and energy into her, but now it felt like I was nothing more than an obstacle in her life. I tried to tell myself that it was just a phase. Maybe she was going through something. Maybe it was stress from work or her personal life. But no matter how much I tried to rationalize it, the words kept echoing in my head. "You're toxic." I didn't sleep much that night. I sat on the couch, my mind spinning. What had I done wrong? Had I smothered her? Had I been too protective? Too involved? I had always tried to support her, to be there for her. Was that wrong? The next day, I called her, hoping for some clarity, but her response was cold. I need some space, Mom, she said. I can't keep doing this. And just like that, I was cast aside. In the following months, the distance between us grew wider. She started therapy, though she never told me exactly what they talked about. What I did know was that every conversation we had seemed to carry an edge of bitterness. There were accusations about me, about our relationship, about everything. She was hurt and she was angry, but she wouldn't tell me why. She just expected me to understand. I tried. I really did. I apologized for things I couldn't even remember doing wrong. I asked her how I could be around without suffocating her. I begged her to help me understand, but her response was always the same. It's better if you're not in my life, Mom. And then one day, she asked me for something that made my heart stop. You can hand over the house, she said. That'll be the beginning of a new cycle for me. The words were like a slap in the face. The house, the one thing I'd always kept for myself, the house Ben and I had dreamed of together, the house where I had raised her. I tried to smile, but it felt like my face was cracking. Julia, I said softly, the house is my home. It's all I have left of your father. She just stared at me, her expression unreadable. Well, if you want to be a part of my life, that's the price. And that was when it hit me. She didn't just want space. She wanted everything. She wanted me gone. And that was the moment I decided that maybe it was time for me to stop giving, to stop being the one who always bent, who always sacrificed. But before I could act, she made it clear. The house, Mom. That's the only way I'll consider moving forward. That's when I started to make my plans. A few weeks had passed since that conversation, and I still couldn't shake the feeling of disbelief that had settled in my chest. How could it have come to this? I had always believed that, no matter what, I would be there for Julia and she for me. But now it seemed like everything had shifted, like the very ground we'd both stood on had cracked beneath our feet. I spent days going over our past, trying to find the moment when everything changed. I couldn't pinpoint it exactly. Maybe it was the subtle shifts in her tone over the years, the increasing frequency of her complaints about my overbearing nature. Maybe it was the fact that, as I got older, I had become more protective, more anxious about her well-being. But still, I was her mother. I had always done my best. Didn't that count for something? I tried to be patient. I tried to give her space. But the more I did, the more distant she became. Our conversations felt like walking through a minefield, each word carefully chosen, each sentence weighed with tension. She would accuse me of making her feel pressured or guilted, and no matter how I tried to explain myself, she shut me out further. Then, one day, she called me and told me she had started therapy. At first, I was relieved. Maybe, I thought, we could finally have some clarity. Maybe the therapist could help her see what I didn't, how much I loved her, how much I had tried to give her. But when she spoke of therapy, it wasn't in the way I expected. It wasn't a path to healing, not for her. Instead, she said something that caught me off guard, something I wasn't prepared to hear. Mom, she said, her voice quieter than usual, I've been thinking a lot about everything. And I've realized something. It's not just me. It's you. You're creating pressure. I don't know how to breathe when I'm around you. I wanted to argue. I wanted to say, no, that's not true. I only want what's best for you. But the words stuck in my throat. I'm trying, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I've always tried to give you the space you need. How can I make things right? There was a long pause on the other end of the line before she spoke again. You can't make things right, Mom. You've done too much damage. You don't even see it. I've been telling you for years, but you just don't hear me. I think the best thing now is for you to not be a part of my life anymore. It's just too much." Her words hit me like a punch. I had spent my whole life trying to be the best mother I could be, and now, in a matter of moments, it all felt like it was being thrown away. But then, after a brief silence, she added something that made my heart stop. You could, you could start by giving up the house. It would be the beginning of a new cycle for me, a fresh start. At first, I thought I had misunderstood her. "The house?" I asked, almost in disbelief. "Yes," she said, her voice matter of fact. "It's just a house, Mom. It's not like you need it anymore. I've been thinking about it. If you hand over the house to me, we can finally close this chapter. You'll be out of my life for good, and I'll have what I need." The audacity of it stunned me. After all that had happened, after everything she knew I had given up, every sacrifice I had made, she wanted me to give up my home, the only thing left that I had of value. It wasn't just a house to me, it was where I had built my life, where I had lived with Ben, where I had raised her. But there was a calmness in my heart that I hadn't felt in a long time, a cold clarity. For the first time, I realized that this wasn't just about the house. It was about something far deeper. She didn't want me, and she was willing to strip me of everything in order to erase me from her life. "You can't be serious," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. But she was. Her silence spoke louder than anything she had said. I knew right then that I had to make a choice. I couldn't keep begging for her love, for her approval. I couldn't keep trying to fix something that had already broken beyond repair. The next morning, I made an appointment with the notary. I didn't give in to her request. Instead, I did something that would change everything. I made a will. I left her everything, everything I had, everything she wanted: the car, the bills, the insurance policies, everything except the house. The house was mine, and I wasn't going to give it up just because she wanted me gone. But I didn't keep it for myself either. I decided it would go to a cause, something that might bring a small amount of light into the world, even if it couldn't do the same for me. I left the house to a local nonprofit organization with one condition. They had to offer the house to a woman over the age of 55, someone who had no support system, someone who needed a home. It wasn't much, but it was my way of ensuring that the space I had lived in for so many years wouldn't be lost to someone who didn't care about it. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't a punishment. It was just a way for me to have some control over my life again. I signed the papers, and then I sat in the quiet room of the notary's office, feeling the weight of the decision sink in. It wasn't until a week later, when Julia called me, that I understood the true consequences of my choice. The call came late one evening. I was sitting on the porch, the light fading around me as I sipped my tea, staring at the roses I had planted with Ben. They had bloomed late this year, just like everything else. The phone rang, cutting through the stillness. I almost didn't pick up, but then I saw it was her, Julia's name flashing on the screen. My heart twisted, but I answered anyway. "Mom," she said, her voice tight, controlled. "I've got the documents. What is this? What are you trying to do to me?" Her words hit me like a slap, though I'd anticipated her reaction. But it didn't soften the sting. I leaned back in my chair, crossing my arms, feeling a strange calm wash over me. She was angry, yes, but it wasn't the type of anger that would make her listen. She was already set in her mind, convinced that I had betrayed her somehow, that I was the one who was wrong. She wasn't even close to understanding. "I left you everything," I said, my voice quiet but firm, "except the house." There was a long pause, followed by a burst of hysterical laughter from her side of the line. "What? What kind of joke is this?" she demanded. "You're telling me you're giving me everything, everything, except for the one thing that matters the most? The house? She was shouting now, and the words tumbled out in a frantic rush. You're choosing to take this away from me? I exhaled slowly, unfazed by the storm brewing on the other side of the call. No, Julia, you asked for the house. I'm giving you everything else. The car, the insurance, the bills. You'll have it all. But the house? No. Why? She asked, her voice quivering, the anger briefly giving way to something else, something I couldn't quite place. Why are you doing this? You know how much I need that house, Mom. I've been talking about moving back for months. Why are you making this so hard? I paused, feeling the weight of it all pressing on my chest. My throat tightened as I remembered the years of quiet resentment, the looks of dismissal when I tried to talk to her, to explain how I was feeling. I had never made her feel as if she was unwanted. I had always been there. But now, here we were, at the end of whatever it was that had been left between us. You don't get it, Julia, I said finally, my voice unyielding. I'm not trying to hurt you. I'm trying to live my own life. And this house is mine. It's where I built my life with your father. It's where I've lived and where I'll continue to live. You've made your choices, and now it's my turn to make mine. She was silent for a moment. I could hear the tremor in her breath, but I refused to soften. If she had chosen this path, she would have to walk it. Mom, she said finally, her voice cold and distant, I'll sue you for this. I will. You can't do this to me. You can, I said, a calm resolve in my tone. You can sue, but it's legal, Julia. You know that, and it's very reasonable. You've already gotten everything I could possibly leave behind. The house is mine, and I'm not giving it to you. The call ended shortly after that, and I sat there for a long while, staring at the phone, the empty space that had once been filled with so much noise, so much life. Now it was just the sound of my own breath, the quiet buzz of a world moving on without me. The following days were a blur. Julia didn't call again. She didn't try to reach out. Instead, I received a letter from her lawyer, a thick packet of papers outlining her intention to challenge the will. She would fight for the house, she said. She would make me regret what I had done. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. I had made my decision, and nothing would change it now. I made arrangements with the nonprofit, the same organization I had chosen to entrust the house to, and signed the final documents. They were thrilled to receive it, to know it would go toward helping a woman in need. They even offered to help me find someone to take over the house, someone who needed it more than I did. But I didn't need help finding someone. The house was meant for someone like me, someone who had no family left to lean on, someone who had no support system. And I didn't need Julia to see that. In fact, I didn't need her to see anything at all. I began making plans for the future. Little things at first, small renovations, a fresh coat of paint, planting more roses. I wasn't trying to distract myself. I was preparing for the life I was now carving out for myself. I knew I wouldn't hear from Julia again, not for a while at least. She would stew over it, no doubt, ruminate on the injustice she believed had been done to her. But for me, it was a fresh start, a clean slate. The house, in a way, had been holding me captive for years. It had been a symbol of everything I had lost, of everything I couldn't control. But now, it was a place of freedom. The house was no longer a weight on my shoulders. It was a new beginning, for me and for someone else. As I put the final touches on the changes to the house, a strange peace settled over me. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew that for the first time in a long time, it was mine to shape. And as for Julia, she would have to find her way, just as I had to find mine. It didn't take long for the storm to hit. A week after I signed the final papers, I came home from the grocery store to find a letter waiting for me, its envelope marked with the lawyer's name. I had anticipated this moment for days, but somehow, when it arrived, I still felt a chill crawl up my spine. I sat at the kitchen table, the sound of the wind rustling outside, and the creak of the old house around me. My hands shook a little as I opened the letter, but I steadied myself before reading the contents. Julia was suing me. She had filed a formal complaint, and it was clear she wasn't going to back down easily. I set the letter down and let out a slow breath, trying to center myself. I had expected it. What else could she do? I hadn't given her the house, the one thing she thought she was entitled to, and in her mind, that was a betrayal too great to ignore. The phone rang again, and I knew who it was before I even looked at the caller ID. It was Julia. "Mom," she said, her voice strained, almost brittle. She was holding back the fury, I could tell, but it was there, just beneath the surface. "What did you do? How could you do this to me?" I didn't answer immediately, letting the silence settle between us. She needed to be the one to speak first. "I didn't do anything wrong, Julia," I replied calmly. "I gave you everything I could, but the house is mine. It always has been." She went silent, and I could hear her breath quicken. Then, with a sharp edge, she said, "What do you mean, it's yours? It's supposed to be mine. You're supposed to leave it to me." I sighed, the same words over and over again. She couldn't see the bigger picture, and she didn't want to. To her, the house was the last thing that mattered. Everything else, the car, the insurance, the bills, had been reduced to mere assets, like pieces in a game she wasn't willing to lose. "You've been saying for years that I've been a burden to you, that I've been toxic. Well, now I'm doing what's best for me, and that house—" I took a deep breath. "It's not something I'm willing to part with. Not for you, not for anyone." The silence was deafening. I could almost hear her brain working overtime, trying to process what I was saying, trying to piece together her next move. But it didn't come. Instead, there was a quiet sob, a breaking sound, and then the line went dead. I sat there, phone in hand, feeling an odd mixture of relief and sadness. What had I done? Had I gone too far? But then I reminded myself I hadn't gone far enough. I had finally done what I needed to do for my own peace. The next few days were a blur of lawyers, paperwork, and endless arguments with Julia. She had managed to gather a group of her friends, people I hadn't even met, and they all seemed to share the same view, that I was being cruel, that I had turned my back on my daughter. They were the voices that filled the social media posts, the angry comments that I received, the whispered criticisms from people who didn't understand. But through it all, I stayed calm. I stayed firm. I wasn't going to let anyone push me around anymore. Not Julia, not her friends, not anyone. And then, one afternoon, I got the call from her lawyer. Julia had requested an urgent meeting. He said it was to discuss the final settlement, a last-ditch effort, I assumed, to convince me to hand over the house. I agreed to meet him, but I knew in my heart that nothing was going to change. I arranged to meet at the local cafe near the therapist's office. It was a neutral space, neither my home nor hers. When I arrived, I found Julia sitting at a table near the window, her arms crossed and her jaw set. She looked like a stranger to me now, too angry, too distant. She didn't even say hello when I sat down across from her. Her lawyer, a man I'd never seen before, gave me a tight smile, clearly trying to be polite. But it was Julia who did most of the talking, her voice sharp and accusatory. She told me how much she had sacrificed for our relationship, how I had never been the mother she needed, how I had always been a burden on her. I listened. I let her get it all out. There was no point in interrupting. She was too deep in her anger to hear anything I said. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, she looked at me and said, "So this is it. You're leaving me nothing but a memory, nothing but pain." I met her gaze, unflinching. I'm leaving you everything I can, Julia. I've given you the chance to rebuild your life. You're right, you've sacrificed a lot. But this is my sacrifice now. It's my turn. Her face twisted with disbelief. You're just going to let me go? No, I said quietly. I'm not letting you go. I'm giving you the space to figure out who you are without me. And that's the hardest thing I've ever done. For a long time, she didn't say anything. She just stared at me, her eyes filling with unshed tears. Then, finally, in a voice that barely rose above a whisper, she asked, "Why the house?" "I gave you everything else," I replied. "That house, it's mine, and I'm not ready to give it up yet." Julia stood abruptly, slamming her hands on the table. "I hate you," she spat, before turning and storming out of the cafe. I didn't chase her. I didn't even look back. I had made my decision, and no one, especially not Julia, could make me doubt it. I had fought for my peace, and I wasn't going to give that up. I paid for my coffee, left a tip, and walked out into the crisp evening air, feeling a strange sense of relief settle over me. Julia might never understand, but maybe, just maybe, she would find her own peace. The days after the meeting were quiet, the kind of quiet that comes when the storm has passed, leaving only the remnants of what was once familiar, now irrevocably changed. Julia's lawyer had sent a final letter. She was no longer pursuing legal action, or at least not for the house, but I knew that meant nothing was truly settled. There was a sense of finality, but also a strange and unsettling calm, like the eye of a storm before the winds pick up again. I tried not to think about it. Instead, I turned my attention to the small things, the things that had always given me comfort, like my garden. I spent my mornings watering the roses, watching the buds slowly bloom into delicate, perfect flowers. I used to do this with Julia when she was younger, although I could never get her to appreciate the patience it took to nurture something. She preferred instant results. She'd pull out weeds without a second thought, not realizing how careful you had to be to preserve the roots of what you planted. It was a metaphor, I realized, for everything between us. One afternoon, as I was in the garden, a knock at the door startled me. I stood still for a moment, unsure whether I should answer. But the sound came again, louder this time, and I knew who it was before I even opened the door. I hesitated, hand on the doorknob, for a moment longer than I needed to. When I finally opened it, Julia stood there, her arms wrapped around herself, as if she were trying to protect something fragile inside her. She looked different, more tired, more vulnerable, but still with that stubborn defiance I had known for so many years. She didn't speak immediately. Instead, she just stood there, as if waiting for me to do something, to say something. The words that I had rehearsed in my mind for weeks, even months, all seemed to evaporate the moment I saw her. In her eyes was that old familiar hurt, but there was something else too. A question, maybe even hope. I took a breath, ready to speak, but she cut me off before I could say anything. "Are you ready to come in? Not to take, but to be?" Her voice cracked as she spoke, the weight of the question hanging between us like a tangible thing. I was quiet for a long time, the wind picking up around us, tugging at the old oak tree that stood at the edge of the yard. The question echoed in my mind, not to take, but to be. I had been so focused on setting boundaries, on creating distance, on making sure I protected myself from more pain. But maybe this was something else, an opportunity to be present in a way I hadn't allowed myself to be, to listen, to try and understand. And yet I knew the answer already. "No," I said softly. "I'm not ready to let go of what I have now. Not yet." Julia's face twisted for a moment, a flicker of anger crossing her features, but it was gone almost as quickly as it appeared. She took a step back, then another, as if she were already turning away. I didn't expect you to, she said, her voice distant now, as if the warmth had drained from it. I just, I wanted to ask. I know, I replied, my heart heavy with the weight of it all. But this is where I need to be. This is mine. I've fought too long to be here, to have this peace. She nodded, a single tear slipping down her cheek, though she wiped it away quickly, as if embarrassed. There was no more anger in her gaze, just a deep, painful understanding of the distance between us. Goodbye, then, she whispered, turning on her heel and walking away. I didn't stop her this time. There was no reason to. She had her own journey to make, just as I had mine. I watched her go, the soft echo of her footsteps fading with the distance. The sun was setting now, casting long shadows across the yard, and for a moment I stood still, just breathing in the silence. The house was mine. The roses were blooming, and for the first time in a long while, I felt something akin to peace settle into my bones. As the last light of the day faded, I closed the door and walked back to the kitchen, where I poured myself a glass of wine. There was no need to linger on what had happened or what might come next. I had made my choices, and I would live with them. I walked upstairs to my bedroom, passing the sign I had put up on the door. It wasn't just for me. It was for any woman who might come to stay here, looking for refuge, looking for a place to heal. The sign read, "The Support House, Women Who Don't Have to Endure." I sat on the edge of the bed, looking around the room where so much of my life had unfolded, where I had cried, laughed, fought, and made peace. I didn't need anyone else's approval. I didn't need Julia's forgiveness. I was enough just as I was. And as I closed my eyes, the last thought I had was that maybe, just maybe, Julia would understand one day. But if she didn't, that was hers to carry. For now, I was home, and I was at peace.